loading. It's loading. I got it. This meeting is being live streamed. Excellent. That's what we want. We want it to be live streamed. All right, it's just taking a minute. And like magic. There we go. I can hear myself. So I'm like, we're gonna mute that right now really quick. Okay. And we're gonna press record here. And now we're live. We're doing it. And I'm having a great time. I hope you're having a great time because, hey, welcome to the Everyday Goddess Live, a space that examines the intersection of science and sacred to inform your daily life choices. Yeah. I am so excited for today's episode because everything this person does, represents, and works in, I am just so excited because this Everyday Goddess Live is all about bringing together everything from goddess to good all. We take everything from myths to mental health, power, and your pussy, feminism to patriarchy, and everything in between. I'm your host, Carlen, the Everyday Goddess, a clinical sexologist and psychotherapist. And today I have the most special guest for you. I've been following her for years. This is our first time like officially meeting, and she doesn't know how hard I'm fangirling, but I'm good. She knows now. So welcome and thank you for being here, Dr. Michele Ross. Woo! Let me tell you a little bit about who we have here with me today. Dr. Michele Ross is a 5-time author and world-renowned neuroscientist. She's smart, friends. She's really fucking smart, who specializes in helping patients use plant medicine to heal their physical and emotional pain. She's the founder of drmichelleross.com, a leading source of courses and solutions for using CBD, cannabis, kratom, and mushrooms. That's right, psilocybin, for better health. Dr. Ross's groundbreaking books, including CBD oil for health, Vitamin Weed, a 4-step plan to prevent and reverse endocannabinoid deficiency, Train Your Brain to Get Thin, and Journal Yourself to Health, have been translated into multiple languages. She's been featured on The Doctors, on Ricky Lake, on The Today Show, and many other TV and radio shows. Dr. Ross has also formulated numerous supplements for well-known celebrity wellness and CBD brands and is excited to finally launch her own line through Aura Therapeutics. Yes, we're going to talk about that for sure. And Dr. Ross has also worked with patients around the globe for over a decade and believes the quality of your life can improve with plant medicine and has since helped thousands of men and women around the world discover true healing with personalized plant medicine. You know why she's here with me today. You know why it's plant medicine. Give a big warm welcome to Dr. Michele Ross. Yay! I need to get like the button of like the crowd, like the audience to like
I can hear them.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here with me today. It like that intro, I was just like, wow, I'm drooling and I'm saying the intro. Like, it's incredible. How are you doing today?
I am amazing. I've wanted to talk with you forever. Unfortunately, you're in Canada. Like, I feel like if you were here in the States, like you'd be my bestie for sure.
Yeah,
so
don't pee. We're just cross-border besties.
Right. But yeah, there's been so many things I've done in my career. Part of that has been sort of just me trying to work through like chronic pain and like always be working and always being creative. But I've been writing books and writing things since like I was a kid. So it's just like, I write books, I create things, like I can't stop creating. And it's sort of been really a great thing for building my whole empire, like to be able to help people and get the word out about plant medicine. Like I was one of the OGs out here in the United States, like before it was cool, you know?
Yeah, you are one of the OGs. Like I've been following you for a while. I know I told a few people I was talking to you and they were so excited because you like the fan base. Like you guys, if you don't follow Dr. Michele Ross, I highly recommend you follow her because I keep saying your name. You have one of those names that you want to say like the whole time. You know what I like the whole name. Like Dr. Michele
I'm
Ross.
Dr. Ross, the cannabis boss. There we go.
Oh, hey. That's a t-shirt is what that is. The cannabis boss. I gotta make you that.
No, it was funny when I married my second husband. I was like, "Your name rhymes with everything. It's awesome. That's perfect."
Yeah. You're like, wrap it up. We'll take that one. That one. So Michele, tell us a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit let's start with who you are, and then let's talk about like how you work with people. So tell us like about you, like your story. What do you want to tell me?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of pieces there. There probably like my next book will probably not be a science book. It'll actually be a memoir. I'm working on one right now. It's like, I was like, wait, a memoir is not an autobiography. You don't have to have like the ending yet. Like, because I know the good things are still coming, but it was like just a snippet of like what part of my life was like. But it's been a very interesting ride. But I actually started off in a I lived in front of a crack house in New Jersey, so on the East Coast, like in a bad neighborhood, and I was exposed to people doing drugs, and I was like, I want to help these people. Like, this is really just horrible. And so I ended up going to college, started to study neuroscience, actually did some drug addiction research in a lab there, and decided, hey, I'm going to be a doctor. And then I found out like basically there was no real good drugs to prescribe for drug addiction, and that we needed scientists to make the drugs to help people. So then I was like, okay, I'm not gonna be a doctor, I'll be a scientist. Of course, I had never met another scientist. I've never even seen a woman scientist, by the way. I was like Bill Nye the Science Guy. Like back in the day, there was no representation of women on TV doing science or smart things. No. And now that sounds absurd, but I was cast as the first smart person and also first scientist on reality television after I did my PhD. So no joke, the head of like the network was like, we don't put smart women on TV. That doesn't test well. And I was like, like literally I'm like being told that people wouldn't watch smart women. And that's ridiculous. And so basically when I was on Big Brother, which is a TV show, like a competition show, like Survivor and like The House, this is a show that's like, millions of people watch. It's a top rated show in the United States. We have
what season were you? Just what season were you for Big Brother?
I was season 11.
Season 11. For those of you watching, Michelle was season 11 Big Brother. So
so 2009. Yes. So I never thought I would do reality TV or anything, but they literally had a casting for a scientist, and I thought it was like maybe a documentary or something. And I applied, and they're like, "Oh, it's this show you've been watching with your family, since it debuted." And I was like, okay, I'm the oldest of 4. So like literally it was something I did with my brothers and sisters and stuff during the summer when, they were home for school. And so it was like, okay, I'll go do this. And it turned out that I ended up being like the first scientist a lot of women saw on TV. Wow. And then afterwards, they started casting smart women on reality TV shows afterwards. Like, oh, people love Dr. Ross. We'll put these other women on TV. And I'm like, that shouldn't be a hard thing to say. Hey, when you be smart, sexy, whatever the hell that they want to be, they can just have a brain. Like, it's not just only boobs, like that's it. And a lot of these reality TV shows, it was always a Hooters girl. There was even a Hooters girl on my season, no joke. Like, that's okay, but like you can also have a smart sexy woman. Like I was literally supposed to be on there with like my glasses and be like, hi guys, I'm weird, I'm from a lab, like
Velma.
I was literally like, I was like, okay, I'll audition like that, whatever, get through the process. And then I was like, take I'm on TV now. I can be myself now. So it was sort of funny. So now we have like these well-rounded, people on TV, and things are very different, right? Like we're in 2021, like this was 2009, but think about it. Like we had stereotypes on reality TV for a very long time. Like I'm from New Jersey. They basically also thought I was like a Jersey Shore character too. Yeah.
That's what I was like.
I'm like, I'm not
stereotypes.
Snooki, like it's so weird, like how they try to put you in a box for things. And in terms of that, right, it's so funny too, because I actually had published on cannabis research before I went on TV. I wasn't a cannabis user then, which is sort of crazy, but I was actually receiving funding from the federal government here, the NIH in the United States. And when you study drugs, you can't use them. You'll get fired. So no cannabis, nothing, I was studying cocaine, heroin, cannabis, all these different drugs of abuse. Again, we call them drugs of abuse. We now know that, obviously cannabis is not a drug of abuse, but that's what it was labeled as when I was studying it. So here I was a published cannabis scientist on TV, couldn't really talk about that at all. It was just funny. And then I went off of that TV show, decided I did not want to be in a lab, like studying things and basically telling people that drugs are bad, like don't do drugs, like psychedelics are bad, cannabis is bad. Like I didn't want to spend my whole career doing that because I knew that was wrong.
Yeah.
And so I left academia. I went into actually creating supplements and beauty products, like formulating them for celebrity brands, which was a
Awesome.
total random like job I got offered. And I was like making products for the Kardashians and stuff, which is so weird. Like Kim Kardashian,
So
like no joke.
cool. Okay,
No
well now
joke.
I'll use their product, but I'll use their products now because I know that
No,
you
no, they were
formulated
horrible. I
them.
almost got fired. I was like, I can't sell these products. Like they're harmful for people. Like I can't do it because there's like a buffer between celebrities. Like they
Yeah.
don't actually approve anything.
No.
Like their
No.
people do. And they're like, what will make the most money? I was like, we don't need people to die. We're good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
It's trying to
been some
do good.
lawsuits in the past. Yeah. So I always try to make sure that products were selling, but like they were safe. And there's been a lot of ethical problems in the past with a lot of celebrity lines. Like, that's real. So I learned a lot of stuff. And I was like, I'm learning how to do marketing as a scientist. Like, again, I'm a brain scientist. I don't have like marketing, background or anything like that. But I learned from some of the greats, like how to launch different health brands. And I was like, okay, well, this is really interesting because while I was working there, I met my husband who worked in the cannabis industry since he was like 19 and was like, well, you need to help me with your brain, help like these patients that I'm like giving cannabis to because they don't really know what they're doing. No one knows what they're doing. There's like a couple of doctors in California. There's not a lot. And I sort of moved out of the selling like celebrity supplements that, in vertical into actually helping patients and working with him. We founded a nonprofit called the Endocannabinoid Deficiency Foundation back in the day. And that was, of course, influenced by the great Ethan Russo and his theory of endocannabinoid deficiency. I didn't make that up, but we basically built on that and looked at what was going on in the cannabis world. Like, what did we not know? Like, that's my big thing as a researcher. I was like, so what kind of dosage do you take for lupus? Oh, there's not a damn thing on the internet about cannabis for lupus back in like 2010, 2011. I was like, okay, well, we're going to write some stuff. And so I was the one writing like cannabis for endometriosis, cannabis for Lyme disease, cannabis like for lupus. And it sounds crazy now because there's thousands and thousands of articles. But back in the day, it was me. And then it was me being translated into every other language possible. It was like hilarious. I was like, wow, they're going for it. Like I would be on random sites and it would be like my content. But I was okay with it because we needed to get the message out. It was really important. We also needed to stress like, hey, this is what we know. Why isn't there any other research being funded for this? And like being suggested, like, you should do a study on this. You should do a study on this. And we ended up trying to raise money for some of this research. Of course, it was very difficult in the United States back in the day to raise money. And there was a lot of stigma. People didn't want to donate for cannabis research. Yeah. It was like really crazy. Because again, right now it's like on fire, but like I've literally tried working with organizations like the Endometriosis Foundation and would like literally get like cleared for a grant. And then like the person on top would be like, so they're not going to fund any surgeries if we give the cannabis to people, like they don't need surgery anymore. Oh, we can't write this check. Like that's the kind of stuff I dealt with for years. So like I paved the way for a lot of things. I literally hosted the first cannabis and women's health conference, like in the world, the first cannabis and pets conference, like a lot of things like originated when we moved to Denver. Like we went hog wild and we like just launched all the clinical research, education, all this and that. And it was just like, please like plant these seeds. Like a lot of things, like for example, Elementa Network, right? That was a big network for women. They were at my first, cannabis for women's health conference. It was like, we were planting seeds, we were training people that then went on to do bigger things. And it was just like, it was just amazing. It's almost like the mycelial network when we talk about mushrooms. We're like connecting, growing, and like just taking over. But really, it was like somebody had to do the hard work, had to, push legalization in different places, had to do the education, had to harass doctors to accept cannabis. Like we had to do that. And I mean, along the way, so many crazy things happen. Like that's why I was like, trust me, there's a book or a movie somewhere in all this, because it's still crazy to this day. Like I just talked right now. This is the craziest thing. My nonprofit actually, somebody just forged documents for my nonprofit and was like raising money. I was like, that nonprofit's been closed for 4 years. Like I literally got a phone call. They're like, so are you stealing money? And I'm like, who are you? Like, so that's like literally like it's hijinks all day. But cannabis is a funny field. It's very interesting. I love what I do, but holy crap, it has been a lot of work.
I can, and like bow down, like Yes, thank you for your work, because I remember when because I've been a cannabis user since I was 16.
Yeah.
But I didn't get into talking about it publicly until 20, let me see, when I started doing stuff with like canopy growth and all of that kind of stuff, and women
It
in
was like
weed,
corporate cannabis.
corporate cannabis. And I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, okay. But then, evidence-based, right? Evidence
Mhm.
informed, science-based.
Yeah.
So I'm like doing all of this research, and I had to spend hours to try and find patterns, to try and find information that I could serve to people, that I was confident in serving to people. So I get what you're saying. Like, there was nothing, and now there's so much. How does that feel for you? How does that feel for you being an OG, like literally paving the way globally for cannabis, for plant medicines, especially for women, to now be in this space where it's just accessible, it's a hot topic, like money is being thrown, right? Sex, weed, snacks, money. It's culture now, right? I mean, it was culture before, but it was kind of like underground culture. Now it's becoming like, who doesn't have a CBD line? You know what I mean? Right? Like, yeah, how does that feel for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. There's a lot of noise though for patients. I mean, we still have patients that are like, I tried 5 CBD brands, like they don't work. Like, what do I do? There's still a lot of problems with access.
Yeah.
In the United States, we still haven't federally legalized cannabis. So
Yeah.
it's a state by state issue. And even states have legalized, for example, like California, there's still cities you can't get cannabis in. I think like only 1 out of 5 cities have legalized. So people are still
Wow.
buying from the illicit gray market, what we call like the black
Yep.
market. And so people are still getting untested cannabis. They're still not getting access to like high quality products. Like, for example, I'm a big fan of cannabis suppositories used
Yes.
vaginally or rectally for pelvic pain and endometriosis, and
Mm.
even just chronic pain from conditions like fibromyalgia can actually cause pelvic pain. So it's not even, reproductive system like oriented. But
Anxiety.
yes,
Let's talk
exactly.
about
Back
anxiety and
pain, so
pelvic
many of
pain,
these
girl.
things, right? Like, so
Yeah.
we have a problem here in the States where I've been like screaming off the rooftops that these things work for people, and people are like, I can't get a cannabis suppository. Or even the states that were selling them, where it was legal to sell them, they'd be like, oh, they're out. No one's had them for a year. And I'm like, I shouldn't have to be telling patients how to make like vagina popsicles to store in their freezer.
Yep.
Because there's no, suppositories available at their local dispensary, right? And it's like, we're in 2021. The cannabis industry has been like legal in a lot of places for like 5-6 years, like, right? I'm in Nevada.
Yep.
You can't get cannabis suppositories here. And I'm like the cannabis and women's health lady. I'm like, what? Like, I need funding to be able to get the products that I use personally to be made here. But then, like, literally, I'll just tell you a little thing about the sex, weed, money. Like, it sounds great, right? Like, you would think I'm a multimillionaire by now, right? Like, I should be, right?
I
like,
hope
I should
so.
have my own cannabis company and all this and that.
Yeah.
Not really like that. I mean, it's actually really hard for women to get capital. The fact that I've been arrested for cannabis and raided, even though all charges were dropped. Like, I was arrested as a patient back in 2016. It makes it really hard to get banking. Banking is not a thing here in the United States. I got my banking removed for selling my vitamin weed book because they thought it was weed. Like, I'm not joking. I never got it back. Like, I have problems with merchant processing. Like, I have a lot of issues.
Yeah, that's for real.
Yeah, these are
PayPal, every pay gateway is like, if you mention anything, that's why if you see it, and like for people who are watching, that's why you see people like us who do work with cannabis or other plant medicines or even sex, for example, and often we have to misspell things, or like everything is in the description versus in the title, because payment gateways will shut us out, banks will shut us out, the world shuts us out, and you're just like,
you're like, I can't get the message out. So that's why I write books, because Amazon doesn't really censor you. They're like, you wrote a weed book, you can write a sex book, you can write whatever you want. I mean, they might like decrease you in the algorithm a little bit. I've seen that sometimes where they're like trying to put the vice books a little bit like less like in the search and things like that, but you can still get your word out with books. And I've been published both self-publishing and through like major like publishers like Simon and Schuster and things like that. So I've gone both routes, but I found that writing books is really helpful to get your word out. Speaking engagements is like, there's certain platforms where you can talk to people and help people. Obviously telehealth, like when you talk to people, it doesn't matter what country or city they're in, even if cannabis or kratom or like whatever we're talking about is illegal there, you can still have these harm reduction and education sessions, which I love. So there's ways to get us out. And by the way, too, among the other things that I do, I'm also like a techie. So I've built social networking and communities. So I actually have a kratom community coming out, a mushroom community coming out called Mushroom MD. So I help code all those. So like when we were talking about you can't say the things, I was like, I am so sick of not being able to talk about things. I just want to help women understand what their options are. And if I have to misspell everything, they're not going to find the information, right? It's like, if I want to talk about kratom, which by the way, is like the CBD of opioids, it's a relative of the coffee plant.
Yeah. So
no stigma about that. It's super safe. It's like matcha tea, like literally it's green powder that you take in capsules, just like a vitamin. Yeah, exactly. So like I've had my accounts taken down on Instagram. I've had all sorts of problems. I've had to change servers. Like you're just like, you know what, Facebook and Instagram won't let us talk about what we need to talk about. So you know what, the option is sometimes to own your own platform. And it's hard because a lot of people are like, I'll move to Circle, I'll move to these things. I was like, they're still not your platform. It's not your server. It's not your platform. And I'm also concerned about how some of these like platforms also even just contain, you know, sensitive patient information. I know patients are like literally telling their entire life stories, like their medical problems and everything else like that, like online for like Facebook to scour and things like that. And we all know that they're not very ethical. So it's like, we need to protect patients. We need to protect them, especially because they're talking about things that are technically maybe illegal in their country or city. And I know as a patient myself, like I went through the same journey that all these patients have had to go through. Like, holy crap, I'm sick. I hurt. I want to get off of my 12 pills. Like, what the hell do? I don't know. Who do I talk to about this? My doctor thinks I'm a drug addict for even mentioning this. Like, that's where we're at. And it was like, I had to go through that same journey to understand the pain of the patient and like those pain points. And it doesn't get any better. Like it's like still like 10 years later, we're still seeing patients go through the exact same problems. Even in legal states, we're like, I went to the ER and I told the doctor that I use a gummy at night, a THC gummy at night for my pain. And they wrote up that I have like cannabis abuse disorder. You're like, dude, this is 2021. What are we doing?
Come on, come to Canada, Michelle. Move to Canada.
By the way, everyone and their mother has said that. You know, I've been trying to convince hubby. I don't know.
You just gotta deal with the snow. Yeah, you just gotta, or just move west, and then you're fine. No snow.
So I mean, Canada is very ahead of the times, right? Your country hasn't even legalized like psilocybin mushrooms completely.
Well, we're about to.
Basically, like turn the other cheek. They're like, it's cool, man. Like, and it's so funny because here we're fighting over the silliest things. I was part of the team here with Decrim Nature in Nevada, trying to like decriminalize ayahuasca and psilocybin mushrooms and things like that. And you're just like, it's such a hard sell. People are like, we don't want the kids doing drugs. Or like, no one wants the kids doing drugs. No one, absolutely no one. But guess what? Why are we throwing like, you know, shamans in jail? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like, can we just stop that, please?
Yeah, this isn't about the kids. Stop worrying about the fucking kids. The kids are fine.
The kids are absolutely fine. And we know dude, we know from the research too, like in Colorado, when they legalized cannabis as adult use, meaning anyone over the age of 21 can use it, all of a sudden cannabis wasn't cool because everyone's mom and dad was doing it. The kids actually use less cannabis because mom and dad aren't cool. So
science.
It's like science. It's like if you legalize it, less kids will be smoking outside their high school. It's fine. Yep. So you turned out fine. So I mean, like, it's funny, all the panic we have. Jeez.
We're fine. We're totally fine. Yeah, I turned out definitely fine. We got a doctor. I got a doctor. We're fine.
I mean, I didn't use cannabis really until my later point in life when I started developing like nerve issues and fibromyalgia and things like that. Like it was hilarious. I actually was like, based on my research training, I was actually taught in school during my PhD from like the people that do all the Lancet studies and things like that basically cannabis causes psychosis. And I was like, people in my family are not mentally well, so I don't want to become crazy. I literally, as a drug addiction scientist, thought that smoking weed would make me crazy.
I used to think that at one point in my life. I was told that right.
I feel
like,
so stupid now.
You get told that. You're like, if you smoke weed, like you never know, you might become schizophrenic. If that
was like a literal thing. I was like, I waited till like the day I was 30 and I was like, maybe I'll try it now. I'm past the window. And I was like, that's not a thing. It was like a made up like boogeyman. Like
yeah.
Totally
I just jumped in. I was like, fuck it, I'm already nuts. Let's just do it. I was like, wrap it up.
Yeah. I mean, I probably could have used it after Big Brother. I definitely had a lot of crazy like fans and things like that. It probably would have helped with the stress and things like that. But also I have like a family history of like a lot of like just health issues and things like that. And you know, I feel like if I had been supporting my endocannabinoid system my whole life, like maybe I wouldn't have developed fibromyalgia. When I like, right, like prevention is better than treatment. Like I feel like if you nourish your body, like, and you take care of it, you're less likely to develop a lot of these chronic illnesses. And instead, like, I was one of those people where, again, it's like, well, I created a lot, but that's clearly because I work way too much. And like sometimes don't even take care of my own health. And it's just like, you have to fill your own cup first. You have to take time for yourself. You know, eat the right things, use cannabis. And I mean, I love it that like cannabis is sort of like my self-care routine. It makes it easy. It's like, even if I work a 14-hour day or like I'm a total jerk to myself and I work 7 days a week, I'm like, boom, cannabis bath bomb at the end of the day. Enjoying it. Like really my self-care routine is literally cannabis in the bathtub. So like my little jacuzzi bathtub in my bedroom, but like, that's it. It's like, I have to make sure like, no matter what I do, I don't forget to incorporate my weed in my routine. It makes me feel good. It makes me healthy. I mean, I use it in different ways medically, but I was like, recreationally, you need to let that stress out. Right. And it's just, it's the best thing. So it's like cannabis, sex, cannabis, hot tub. That's it. Like that's me.
Oh, Michele, thank you. So I love that. So we're talking, thank you so much. Like we're sharing all the stories and everyone's like, okay, wait, hold on a second. Let's bring it back and talk about, because like, I'm in it with you. I'm just like, yes. Like how all the ways that we can use all the plants.
Yes.
But so what we're talking about here, friends, is plant medicines and different kinds of plant medicines. So we've talked about CBD and cannabis, and that's what like you and I both do. We've touched a little bit about mushroom psilocybin, right? And like the magic of that. And then also kratom. So I want us to maybe talk a little bit about how do you work with people? So what are some of the services that you offer to working with people? Totally tell us and like about all these communities that you're building. And then let's talk a little bit about the differences between the plants, because like a lot of people know what cannabis is. Some people have some weird ideas about what mushrooms and psilocybin are. And here in Canada, we are in a gray zone right now because Health Canada is actually actively doing research right now as to how we can start to integrate psilocybin into psychotherapeutic modalities, which is really fucking awesome, by the way. And kratom is a word like I'm not even I have some, which is hilarious. And I even don't know all that much about it. So let's kind of jump into that. How do you work with people? And let's talk about the different plants, because you are the goddess of them. So tell us.
Yes. You know, I call myself a nutritional neuroscientist because all the things that I'm working with, right? Cannabis is food. CBD is food. Mushrooms, whether they're medicinal or the psychedelic kind, they are food. Kratom is a powder. It's a tea, basically. Again, it's food. So these are all foods, right? Like I like to try to move away from this whole thing that this is alternative medicine, things like that. This is food, and we know food is medicine. So that's where we start off from, is that there are different plants for everyone. You know, you don't have to do all the plants. So maybe, you know, there might be some that might not be right for you. There might be, maybe all of them are right for you, but you really have to understand what's going on with your brain and your health to understand which type of plant you need to work with. And it might be different throughout your life too. You might be called to work with one plant or one type of medicine over another. But there's a lot of things. So understanding really like your neurotransmitters, your balance, you know, what are you deficient in? So a lot of the things that I've written about have been about nutritional deficiencies, right? Cool. And so for example, Vitamin Weed is a book about endocannabinoid deficiency. And so we make our own marijuana like compounds, right? So like we make anandamide or bliss molecule, 2AG and things like that. We can make some of these substances based on food that we eat, and we can also harm our own production of these things through stress, like bad medications, toxins, and things like that. So it's like we have normal systems and they can be out of balance, and we need to figure out what we need to do to bring them into balance. And so, for example, somebody that might be just a little off balance could maybe work with CBD, which is not as strong as THC to activate the endocannabinoid system. But like, for example, if you have severe pain, we're not going to send you to CBD. We're going to like try to get you on THC, maybe a little CBD there. It's like, you have to figure out how severe somebody's condition is, how long they've had it, what their liver health is, what their brain health is, and all those things, and try to bring them back to balance. So CBD, cannabis, a lot of our viewers probably know about that. We were talking about kratom. Kratom is one that like people don't really know about. And in Canada in particular, it's harder to get because I think actually Health Canada hasn't cleared it as a supplement or anything, and it's in a very gray area. Like you're not allowed to really buy it. I can't ship it to Canada, so you can't get my brand or anything. It's like you have to like sneak it in.
I did. When I bought it from like the guy, I like bought it like this like old hippie guy in like it wasn't even it was a head shop in old hippie, and he was like, "Listen, I got kratom," and I was like, "Tell me more, old hippie man. Like I am here for the what is this?"
Okay, but this is that's honestly sort of the experience a typical person might have when they like hear about kratom. They might like pick it up from a gas station, like a head shop somewhere, which is so weird. You're like, I'm gonna go pick up my pain medicine at a head shop. That's not how this is supposed to be. But think about CBD years ago, right? Like CBD when it first came out was like not regulated anywhere and was also sort of weird. It was hard to sell it, and so the reason why a lot of these weird new substances, even though they're not new, but like, emerging plant medicines end up in the head shops is because they have high risk merchant processing. So if you can sell bongs and other things, you can sell basically anything. It's like you've been cleared for that. So like, that's why kratom ends up in these head shops, is because kratom is like the highest risk merchant processing. Like it's harder to get than CBD processing. It's not impossible to get like cannabis. Like you can't get credit card processing for cannabis at least in the United States, but like you could for kratom, but it's like one step away from that. So it's like very vicey, like it's hard to get bank accounts and things like that. So that's why you see it in the head shop. But that doesn't mean because the governments are treating it like it's a vice, like it's bad, like nicotine or vapes or something weird, doesn't mean it's actually bad. In fact, it's actually good for your system. So we make our own natural opioids in our body. And so these are called endorphins. And you might experience this if you like go for a run, right? Like, oh, I feel good, like I'm running. Or if you're in pain, right? Like your body produces some endorphins, be like, oh, you just cut yourself, like, boom, we're going to make you feel a little bit better. So you're not screaming in pain forever, right? And so some people don't make a lot of endorphins. And so there's some diseases, like, for example, my disease, fibromyalgia, which is we don't have endocannabinoids, we don't have endorphins, we don't have dopamine, we don't have serotonin, like nothing. Like I'm just empty. Like, like
so you don't come across as empty, girl. So
no, I filled my tank. Don't worry, with all my plans. But really, the average chronic pain patient is on empty. And think about chronic pain, right? Like your endorphins aren't working because you're hurting all the time, right? Another type of group that has low endorphins are people that were on opioids and, for example, are now in recovery. It takes several months to actually kick up your natural endorphin levels. So that's why people really struggle with opioid recovery, because they're like, not only do they not have the opioids that they used to make them feel good, but now their body isn't making them. So for example, this is very different from cannabis, where if you quit cannabis, your body makes your anandamide in like a day. Like it's not waiting like weeks to do it, but our bodies are a little bit different with opioids. It takes us a while to kick back in and make our own natural endorphins. So you feel super crappy, super withdrawal after opioids. And it's like, it's a process that lasts for weeks and months. Like, it's not like, oh, I kicked heroin and now I feel great. Like that's not how it works. And so low endorphins is one of those. So the reason why I mentioned people that are in chronic pain and people that are in recovery is that these are the main people that use kratom. And so kratom can activate your opioid receptors, but it's very different from, say, an OxyContin or an oxycodone. And I'm saying the medications, how they are in the States. Of course, they might have different names in Canada, but basically, we have them, So opiates. So basically opiates that are derived from the opium poppy, or like they make like either they're natural or they're semi-synthetic, et cetera. But there's different opiates that bind to those opioid receptors. They do things like make us feel better. They can also boost our mood. They can actually fight fatigue and things like that. Well, there's a natural plant that's made in tropical like places like Indonesia and Thailand and things like that. It's called kratom. It's a relative to the coffee plant. And basically they grind up the leaves into a green powder, very much looks like green matcha tea. It's a little bit more bitter. So like some people don't like to like drink the powder, but they traditionally either chew on the leaves or they make it into tea. And so in the United States, we can't really grow it here. It has to be really in a tropical climate. So there's like no kratom farms or anything like that, although there probably will be in the future. But like basically it's imported as a powder into the United States. And there's different varieties, sort of like how there's different strains of cannabis. There's not a ton, there's not like thousands of strains, but there's different ones that people, based on how they're processed and where they're grown, people are like, oh, this one might be better for pain, or this one might be better for energy. And it's interesting, there's also dosing thing where this green powder can basically be energizing at a low dose, and at a higher dose can make you really be helpful for pain and really be like, you know, sleep inducing. So it's like you can microdose kratom, similar to microdosing THC, you can get that energizing, like anti-anxiety effect. Or you could be like, holy crap, I just had surgery and I don't want to take these pills that my doctor prescribed. Let me pop a couple of capsules of kratom. And the reason why the kratom is better than the pills is because it activates the pathways downstream of the opioid receptor differently. So one of the big problems with opioids is that you can die from them. You can overdose from them. Like we have the opioid epidemic, right?
Huge. I worked in the needle exchange here for many years. So in the harm reduction field. So I'm big on harm reduction. I'm big on that. Naloxone was big. Like I've seen all of the renditions of naloxone come through. It's huge. And so kratom is like, definitely sounds like it's very complementary to that world.
Yeah. So basically what happens is in the opioid receptors, right, when you have another opiate that's not kratom, right, it binds to the opioid receptor and it activates things downstream that actually can cause basically tolerance. It can cause addiction and it can cause respiratory depression. So we actually know that there's kratom, when it binds to the receptor, because it's a different molecule. I mean, not everything it binds to that receptor is the same, like, right? Like we know with cannabis, right? There's THC, there's THCV, there's different molecules. Well, basically the active ingredients in kratom will bind to the receptor, but won't cause the respiratory depression, or in layman's terms, stop you from breathing. So even if you took like a ton of kratom, you shouldn't be dying in your sleep from, you know, not being able to breathe, which is what we see with opioids. That's how people die. A lot of times they die in their sleep. I mean, my brother, that's how he died from opioids. So it's like, this is a huge thing. So not being able to overdose or die from kratom is a huge thing, especially for pain patients, right? Like we have this ideal that no one should like be on opioids, or no one should like, we have the stigma about it. Guess what? If you're a chronic pain patient, you don't have other options. Like you're like, holy crap, I hurt. So I was on morphine. I was on MS-Contin, which is extended release morphine, for 3 years. And it was the most miserable period of my life. I wanted to die. I was basically in a wheelchair. Like I was just like, I would wake up in withdrawal, like be sweating, be like, I need my morphine, like pop it, and then like go about my day. Like it was miserable. It helped with the pain, but like you kept having to escalate your dose. It was very bad. And so basically I used cannabis to get off that, but it's funny because if I had kratom at the time, that would also been a tool in my toolbox, but people use kratom to not be on these addictive and very dangerous drugs. And there's a lot of stigma around it because it's not an FDA or, you know, Health Canada approved substance. Basically in the United States, you're supposed to be using it as incense, which I don't even know what would happen if I tried to light up a kratom powder. I don't think that would smell good. It's not incense. It's not a candle and it's not incense, guys. This is actually a food, but people call it that online. But basically the kratom, right? I used it for the first time after surgery. So I've been using it for 5 years. I started using it and I was introduced to it after I started using cannabis and psilocybin. So like, I'm not like a OG of kratom or anything, but I have been using it for a long time. And I've been doing really extensive research on it, which is why I published a book on it. And it's just a fascinating field. But I used it. I had several surgeries this summer due to cervical cancer issues. So it's like, we won't get into that, but it was not a fun summer for me. But I ended up having some surgeries and I was prescribed pills and I was like, I don't want these. And so I didn't tell my doctor because doctors don't understand what it is. They'll be like, she's a drug addict. Okay, like I don't need them noting that again. So like, even though it's not, it's just something that they don't feel comfortable with, right? Totally. And so I ended up using kratom and THC after my surgery. Was completely fine. Healed up fast. I actually healed up faster than I was supposed to. So I was like, okay, there was no issues with that. So I was like, I feel comfortable being able to recommend this after surgery. I normally work with chronic pain patients of like not before surgery. Like surgery is like one of those things where you like have to make sure that things are safe because like a whole bunch of things are happening, bleeding and this and that. But I recovered really quickly from it, and I was really just pleased with that experience. I was like, dude, I'm taking 2 or 3 capsules. Like, this is not dangerous. This is not addictive. This is not weird. I wasn't like sweating. Like I was fine, you know? So these are safe things. There's a lot of stigma around it. And being able to help patients that don't know what their options are is so important to me. So like when you ask, you're like, what do I do with patients? So basically I do plant medicine consultations, right? And so I work with patients, I review what they're doing now, any experiences that they've had with these plant medicines. Like bring me your CBD bottle. If this isn't working, like I want to see what you're taking and we'll figure it out. But also, then we go through it, in a session like this, face to face, figure out what they need, what they don't know, fill in the gaps, figure out if there's maybe say a practitioner that they need to be referred to. For example, I'm like not holding ayahuasca ceremonies at my house because then the feds would probably show up, right? So there's some underground people, like that I can refer them to. That's the problem when you're like very high level on like TV and stuff. People are like, you can't do anything fun. So I refer them to the right people, but also like I create personalized protocols of like, hey, if you have or if you're worried about Alzheimer's or you have Alzheimer's, here's how to, microdose psilocybin plus lion's mane plus some other herbs to really help support a healthy brain. And then I follow up with them and make sure that they, are healing, that they're feeling better. And if they want to take some other steps to work on some other things, it's like, hey, you want to work on your trauma now that you've got like your cognitive function down, or if you've got your chronic pain down, like chronic pain, by the way, is such an interesting beast because we know it's like, well, there's some things that could be happening in your brain, some things that could be happening in your gut, your body, but a lot of chronic pain is literally trauma that's stored in the body that we're not even processing. So it's like, it's like the entryway. I love like CBD and cannabis is like the gateway to healing, but I'm like, we got to work on the deeper stuff, right? We've got to uncover it. And so it's just like, we talk about cannabis and it's like, okay, well, let's talk about mushrooms. Let's talk about these other substances and really get the good healing down. Because it's like, people think it's like, okay, you smoke a joint. Well, that's a Band-Aid. You have really deep health issues, right? It's like, we really want people to heal. And I think a lot of times too, people that know about cannabis and things like that, it's like, they don't even know that you could do these things. I was like cannabis and yoga or cannabis, like there's so many things that you can explore with cannabis that are fun and will improve your life. And it's not just about like taking a pill and be like, okay, well, I took my medicine for the day. It's like, no, you know what? Do you want a different life? Do you want a better life? Do you want a life that's in color and 3D? That's what I'm trying to provide for my patients. And then again, I know what that's like because I went from a wheelchair back to healthy through these different substances. And I still like, if I stop them, I'll go back in the wheelchair. Like my body is not 100% cured, right? I use these as my medicines, but like my life is good. Like I was so depressed at one point from like my body being broken by modern medicine. I was like trying to throw my wheelchair off a balcony like that. Here I was like a PhD, like I should have been having like the best time of my life. And here was like the medical community is like, you're disabled, who cares, And I feel like so many women, especially in the United States where we don't have universal healthcare or anything, like they run out of options. Their doctors treat them like crap. Like they're like, oh, we gave you opioids for your pain. Oh, now we can't do that. So we just cut you off. Now you're in opioid withdrawal and you're depressed. Here's some more antidepressants. Okay.
And now you're homeless and now you're like, you have no services that are going to help you. And now like, now you're suicidal. Now you have mental health. Now you have all of these things, right? Absolutely. I totally get that. Michele, what I love about your work and what I love also about plant medicine is that I find, and why like you and I are so compatible, right? Is because like you are the goddess of plant medicines. And I love integrating the work that I learned from you and from my own research, like, into my work with my patients as well. Cause I love what you said there about like, like, let's get you set up and then let's go deeper because often, this trauma or these chronic pain, all it's doing is covering up stored trauma. And plant medicine to me is about uncovering, is the intentional use of plants to relieve, right? To elevate, to inspire, to so many things. Plant medicines are so malleable and flexible and or harm reduction. Like there's just so much magic. And like your work that you're doing is just inspiring. So, excuse me, but inspiring so many people, not only people with chronic pain, but everyone else also to look at. I may not have chronic pain in my body, but I do have chronic emotional indigestion,
I love
like,
it.
right? I do have those other things. And I find that plant medicines, like you've stated, it really is just so expansive for how we can use them and for ourselves. Like you use plant medicines for all kinds of stuff for yourself.
Yeah, and I'd even touch on, right? So I've never actually done ayahuasca. That's a 2022 trip. I'm very terrified of snakes and spiders,
What
which
about
show up in those
Campbell?
things. I have Cambo. You can't do if you have blood clots. So
That's true.
I'm contradicted.
That's
But I
true.
was talking about DMT. So I'm
Yeah.
famous on the internet for being like the first scientist to talk about DMT. Years ago, I did this interview in like 2016 or 15 or something. It got like 3 million views. And so it's funny because still to this day, I get about 2 emails a day from people going, I watched your DMT video. Like, I need to do
Awesome.
this or it'll change my life. And it's very interesting because that was a plant medicine that I didn't really know anything about. What, back in the day, nobody knew, right? And like, we're now learning about its potential for so many different things, from like ALS and like, neurological diseases. And it's been very interesting. Some of these plant medicines, right? Like people think because I made a video like 13 years ago, not 13, but it was like many, many years ago, about certain plant medicines that like I do them all the time or things like that. And I think it's so important for people to remember, like sometimes you're called to do a medicine, you do it, you receive the message, and you can move on. You don't have to do these things 24/7. Like, I'm not like, oh, I'm shrooming like all the time, right? It's like you take breaks, you listen. And then I think that the most important thing about these plant medicines is really listening to yourself, listening to your heart, listening to your mind, listening to your purpose. I really find that journaling, not necessarily like you don't even have to be high about it, but like that integration process of like, who am I? What makes me happy? What is my soul's purpose? Like all those things. Like I'm the biggest fan of journaling. I feel like journaling can heal you even more than like any pill you can ever take. Because knowing who you are, knowing what you want, reflecting back on like what's happened to you, like all of that, like knowing like who you are is really the root of all healing. Like if you don't know what you're doing here, why you're here, it can be a very confusing process. It can be trauma after trauma because you're not doing your soul's purpose, and your soul's like crying, being like, I want to do this thing and you're not listening to me. And so I think that plant medicine, for sure, done with intention, done with right guides, whether you're microdosing, macrodosing, etc. Talk to somebody that knows what they're doing, that cares, that has the right values too. Not all practitioners are good at what they do, and some are, again, ego driven and things like that. Really find somebody that's a fit for you, and find the right plant medicines that are fit for you, and always know that something that's right for someone else may not be right for you, and that's okay. And just listen to your heart, listen to yourself, because you are the goddess. It's like one of those things, right? It's like you are the healer. I do not want to be your healer. I want you to be your healer. I want literally you to reveal how you are going to help yourself be the best version of you. So
every day.
Every day.
Every day. And when we can, sometimes not every day, but when we can,
Yes, no, trust me, there are some days where I wake up in my PJs and I was like, fibro has won. I will relax today, but there's other days where I'm just like, goodness, I can't imagine what the world was and who I was before I used plant medicine. So just to give you a heads up too, it was like being a neuroscientist sounds like the most glamorous job. Like, oh, Dr. Ross is like out there telling people about brain stuff. In reality, it was me chopping 3,000 heads off of rats with a guillotine, like that were on drugs. Like that's not glamorous. That's actually something you need to go to therapy for, right? And so I don't know that person that did that. It's just so weird, that disconnect between somebody who had turned off all their emotions, right, to be able to do something that was really important. My work, it was really important. I even like worked for NASA, like with funding for one point. So like my work actually changed things and helped people. But at the end of the day, it was just like really hard for me. And I wasn't ever connected to my emotions. And this was the time where I wasn't using cannabis. I didn't use plant medicine. And it was so crazy how when I used plant medicine, it opened up those floodgates and like let me feel things, bad things from my past, good things. Like it helped me feel myself. I really felt like after I did reality television, I wasn't actually sure what my purpose was. Like I was like a little lost. I was like, I don't know. I'm not a professor anymore. I'm not a TV star, but like people want me to be like, what is this? Right. And I wasn't really sure. This is the craziest thing. It was like, I did DMT and like sort of got told my purpose. And so like that was, I listened to it and I went with it and tried to not lead with ego and shifted into something that a lot of people were not happy about me doing, right? Like people were like, you're wasting your career going into cannabis and things like that. And you know, just do it, listen to it, you know, listen to yourself. Like, holy crap. The number of people that have told me that my ideas are stupid or like people shouldn't do this or things like that. I would like, there's a list that would probably fill like an entire like bedroom. Totally. People that are like, you're dumb. And then go and do the same thing like 5 minutes later. So I would tell every woman there, you know, don't listen to people. If you feel called to do the medicine, do it. If it brings up ideas that are strange or crazy or like new, roll with it. You know what? Because you know yourself best, and it's your life. So just do it. Find what makes you happy. Do it. That's it. And I love what I do. I wish we're working on the stacks, Cash, but I joke, you know, because that's not my purpose. My purpose was here to heal. I knew that since I was 5 years old when I was telling everyone I'm going to be a brain doctor. Literally, I came from like the hood. Wow. No one in my family was a doctor. No one went to college. And I was like, I would walk around with my little stethoscope, like, I'm going to heal people's brains. Like, wow. And, you know, that's what I ended up doing, but just not in the way that I thought. You know, my service to the world was not, you know, working in a lab, like growing brains and petri dishes. My service is working with patients and helping them actually use the medicine that we were given to. God gave us all these medicines and we're like, we just like ignored it and went to the factory and synthesized crazy things. Right. And so my goal, I'm like, just give people, empower them to use the tools that we've been given. So,
well, exactly. And I love that. I love that. Right. Because all you're saying is, you know, the ego of humanity will never trump the magic of nature. Right. Well, like ever. and that's what you're saying here. That's what your work is essentially saying. It's like, and it's already been done better than how we could ever do it. So let's maybe use this, right? Let's look at how we can use this. And that's like, I just thank you so much for paving the way for women, for men, for this research, for healing, for patients, for voices. Like this isn't like, I'm fangirling. So like, thank you. Honestly, Michele, and thank you for being here and like just talking to us and providing, just like helping me provide a safe space for people to ask these questions, to talk about plants as medicine, as food, as nutrition, as alternatives, as choice.
Yes. Every human should have the choice to put whatever they want in their own body without judgment if you're not harming another person. So we're not free until our bodies are free. We know that it's like women are the least free in this country, but we have to free the medicines and we have to free ourselves. So thank you so much for having me on here.
Michele, thank you. Tell everybody, how can they connect with you? Where can they find you? Share all the things.
Sure. So you can find me at Dr. Michele Ross, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter. Those are my 2 big channels. drmicheleross.com. It's DrMicheleRoss.com. And you can book consultations, find my courses, etc. There, or ask me any question. So
yeah. Guys, check her. Like, honestly, you're just gonna like dive deep, like spend tonight hanging out on her website, on her Instagram, watch all the videos, read all the books, order them all on Amazon. They're all available on Amazon, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Get them all on Amazon. You can see them in the corner. Vitamin weed, CBD for health, Get Thin, and I can't read the other one, but they're all there. So check her out. Thank you, Michele, again. I really, honestly, I just so thrilled to have you here. And goddesses, friends, lovelies, if you're there, I love you. I love you. Thank you so much for also being here. Get your hearts up. And we'll talk to you soon. Yeah, you need the heart.
I'm so bad with hearts.
I love it.